Hello and welcome viewers to another live stream of the Cole Memo. I hope you're all doing well today. Happy Monday. We've got an exciting episode today. We'll be joined by Craig Katz in just a moment. Before I introduce them, I just want to say if you've ever been curious about trying federally legal cannabis drinks that ship right to your door, check out drinkcantrip.com/Cole Memo. That'll get you 15% off your order, and I'll get that same 15% back as store credit, which I will likely use to buy some more drinks. Cantrip's got something for everybody: low dose and high dose options, plus flavors like orange soda, root beer, cola, sparkling seltzers, and more. Again, that's drinkcantrip.com/Cole Memo for 15% off your order of federally legal cannabis drinks. And like I say, I get a little in-store kickback that helps to keep me stocked. So would appreciate it. Folks, we are live. So if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop your comments below. I can try to ask Craig questions as we go through if they fit. But why don't we get right into it for another episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, Craig, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Cole. Thanks for having me on. And how do I get our company, CBDratom, to get their beverages pushed on your show?
Hey, we can talk about that. I love the products, so I'm sure if I can just try one, we can probably work something out. So, heck yeah. Well, hey, you sort of just dove in a little bit there, but please introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do in the space, and yeah, take it away. I want my listeners to know who you are.
Craig Katz. I am the government relations and compliance manager for a company called CBDratom, based out of St. Louis, Missouri. But we have 60 stores in 5 states, including Texas, Missouri, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and New York. And we are a full-service company. We manufacture our own products, we distribute, we wholesale, and then we have our brick-and-mortar stores. I am also on the board of the Illinois Healthy Alternatives Association, which is a trade association based in Illinois that represents the hemp business industry, all the way from farmers to wholesalers, distributors, and retailers. Similarly, I'm on the board in Missouri for the Hemp Trade Association and the United States Hemp Roundtable, which is a national association, and finally the New York Healthy Alternatives Association. So I kind of have a full plate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like it, man. Sounds like you're busy as hell. Well, thank you for coming on the show and doing this. While with as busy as you are. So yeah, you mentioned the Illinois health. What was the
Illinois Healthy Alternatives Association?
Cool. Didn't want to butcher it. And did you want to plug your website for your CBDratom that you mentioned?
Yeah, it is at CBDratom.com, and you can go right there, check out all of our products, everything under the sun, including beverages, which are, as I said, really tasty.
Heck yeah. Well, I think this is going to be one of the really fun parts of the show. I think the whole show's fun. I love these topics. But can you remind folks that are listening in from Illinois how we got to where we are today? Because I think that'll springboard our conversation.
Well, Illinois passed medical marijuana dispensaries legalization back in 2006, 2008, somewhere in that neighborhood. Followed several years later by recreational marijuana. And they created a system called the CRTA, the Cannabis Retail Taxes Act. And that's what governs the sale of federally illegal but state legal marijuana products. The 2018 Farm Bill, which was passed by the United States Congress, removed hemp from the same schedule as marijuana and therefore made it federally legal. And as an offshoot of that action, there was an explosion of products that were developed by entrepreneurs, farmers, etc., that brought into the marketplace various things, gummies, vapes, balms, tinctures, obviously beverages, that contained federally legal hemp, which is governed by federal regulations that limit the amount of THC to 0.3% dry weight total. And that has opened up the door for a thriving industry in the hemp THC and CBD markets, mostly populated by small businesses, mom and pop stores, family farmers, in that nature. The marijuana industry, on the other hand, is mostly populated by large MSOs, which stands for multi-state operators, that have business interests all over the country, sometimes internationally, and own many of the licenses that are available for marijuana dispensaries. What that's led to is competition, which is always healthy, as long as you're being the competitive one and not being the one that's being competed against. And that's where we find ourselves today with the marijuana industry, trying to fight off competition from the hemp industry and trying to regulate hemp into the marijuana space so that they can control all of those products.
Yeah. And I feel like the analogy that I hear all the time that just seems to be the most fitting is like Uber versus taxi, where it's like, go ahead.
Similar concept.
Yeah.
It's basically an attempt to monopolize an industry, something that runs relatively contrary to what American economic policy and business policy is. Go all the way back to the Taft-Hartley Act, which controlled the possibility of monopolies, and now you have to have government approval if you want to have a merger between two grocery store chains or two airline chains or anything of that nature. But the marijuana people feel as though that should not apply to them, and so consequently they're trying to monopolize what they call the intoxicating product industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And by that you mean like within the context of Illinois, we've got this limited licensed system.
Correct.
And I would say the big difference between the way that hemp licensing works in Illinois versus marijuana licensing in Illinois, I should say both in air quotes because we're just talking about cannabis.
Yep.
Very different definitions though, and legal ramifications and regulatory, all that. The difference was, and I even asked I asked David Lakeman, who oversees cannabis regulation and hemp regulation. Yeah, at Illinois Department of Agriculture. He came onto the show, and I said, David, if I bought a hemp license today, when would I get that? And he said, Cole, if you would have bought one this morning, you may have been leaving with one this afternoon. Now, yeah. I hear from boots on the ground that it's not always that smooth and simple, but it can be, is the point. And
the one thing though I have to point out to you is what he's talking about is an agricultural license. That's a cultivation license for farmers to grow hemp, which is considerably different than a retailer's license or a manufacturer's distributor's license of products, because as it stands now, marijuana is heavily licensed through the CRTA. Hemp is unregulated. And so consequently, to open up a hemp store, you need a business license from whatever municipality or local government body that you're dealing with, and that's about as far as it goes. So to open a marijuana dispensary, and by the way, I'm glad you pointed out the language issues with cannabis, because what many people don't understand is that marijuana and hemp are both from the same plant, the Cannabis sativa L. So they're both technically cannabis. The words marijuana and cannabis have become interchangeable in the marketplace for a lot of reasons. But hemp is actually cannabis as well. But now to get back to what I was saying before, is to get a marijuana dispensary license, you have to go through a lot of hoops, and it's very expensive. A marijuana license could easily run you $1 million to just to get a license and to get your store off the ground, if not more. To open up a hemp store, again, you need a business license in a local municipality, and that's basically it. That's one of the reasons why it appeals to social equity actors, to mom and pop operations, to small entrepreneurs, because it's much easier to gain access to the marketplace.
Yeah.
There are people with marijuana dispensary licenses in Illinois that have been granted those licenses 3-4 years ago, who still have not been able to open up a facility because they can't afford it. Getting the license is one thing, but being able to have the capital to actually open up the business is an entirely different question. So that's why those of us in the hemp industry feel as though we're the true social equity program, because we have much easier access to our marketplace, and it's a much fairer industry to operate in. Now, along with that is, of course, the lack of regulation, and that's something that we're trying to change. Most of the actors in our industry want regulation. Something that's kind of unusual, as I say generally when I speak to legislators, whether it's in Illinois or in Washington, D.C., is how many industries come to you and say, please regulate us. It's kind of it's an unusual thing, but we want regulation because we want to get the bad actors out of the industry, and make sure that people understand that when they come into one of our stores, that they're getting a good product, a healthy product, that they know what the ingredients are, and that it's a safe product to use.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And I want to get back to your proposal, but just briefly, what, like you say, not only do the cannabis companies like this, but I think an important part to color in, just for history, in case people haven't been paying attention in the context of Illinois, is that the governor has recently gotten behind, or had recently gotten behind, a proposal that was largely supported by the big marijuana industry. And I don't know, like I just think that's notable to mention. It didn't go anywhere. But any thoughts on that before we move along?
Well, yeah, it didn't go anywhere because of a concerted effort by many of us in the industry to bring the issue to the attention of the legislature and let them understand, educate them as to what was really involved. The bill that the governor was championing was brought by Senator Lightford, and it was supported by the marijuana industry. It would have thrown the hemp industry entirely under the CRTA and into marijuana dispensaries. So it would have effectively killed off the hemp industry as we know it today, with the local small businesses and entrepreneurs. It would have been devastating to the industry. Would have probably put a lot of family farms out of business, as well as people who have spent the last 7 years building up their businesses. So that came up in the veto session the first week of January, and myself, many other people in the industry spent long hours in Springfield trying to educate the legislators on what was really at stake, and ultimately, between hearing from constituents and the education process, the legislators determined not to call that vote for a bill in that bill for a vote in the House. ultimately defeating it. One of the few defeats that Governor Pritzker has suffered in his time as governor.
Yeah, and I should be fair, and this gives me a good point, a good opportunity to kind of like circle back on something that I mentioned earlier. There were some people that qualified as social equity applicants that supported that House Bill 4293, I believe it was at the time as well. That measure that, like you say, would have basically taken the hemp industry, or rather, I don't mean to say hemp industry, it would have taken hemp and only allowed people licensed under CRTA to sell cannabis products.
Yeah, that's correct. The reason for that is that there are some social equity license holders, amongst whom are the people that I've suggested. Many of them have the licenses, but haven't been able to open up businesses because of the economic and financial commitments that are involved. And those people who worked hard to get those licenses awarded to them were concerned, and I understand that concern, that the hemp industry is undercutting their ability to get started in the marijuana space. So I do understand that, and we're trying to address that through our own social equity process in the legislation that we've been promoting.
Okay. Well, we should get back to that. I do want to talk about that. But just like I say, to round out the point, it seems like the difference between approaches here is limited licensing versus open licensing. Because if you get people around the table, everybody agrees on the concepts that need to be agreed on. And by that, I mean labeling, testing requirements, and not making sure that, people under the age of 21, or in some cases 18, cannot get these products.
Absolutely.
And so I do think that that's an important foundation to lay ourselves with, because I think that is the primary difference between the approaches. It's weird. We don't agree on the important points to public safety. We disagree on the important points related, because I don't want to downgrade that these are important points to people in the industry.
Sure.
So
Well, first of all, the age gaining is absolutely important. These products should not be in the hands of children. Although I want to point out that there are no 8-year-olds that are going into stores and buying these products. It's undoubtedly their parents that are buying the products and maybe leaving them out on the counter, and their kids get into them for whatever reason. No different than when we were kids, and they talked about kids getting into the liquor cabinets.
right.
If the parents aren't taking responsibility for what's going on in their homes, that's a serious issue. But there's no question that the age gating, labeling, the testing, all childproof packaging, all of those things are of primary importance. And I don't know how anybody could disagree with that on either side of the issue, whether it's marijuana or whether it's hemp products. That should be something everybody agrees on. As far as the question of licensing disparity, which is, I think, really what's at the root of this, the problem is that the marijuana industry, when they negotiated to make a deal to get legislation passed that would allow them to operate, cut what is basically a bad deal for them. And they have been living with the results of that bad deal for many years now. And they see the hemp industry as not having to deal with that. And they're not happy about it. And I can understand that as well. I don't blame them for being that unhappy about that. They should be unhappy about it, but they're in a bed of their own making, so to speak. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make the hemp industry suffer from the same disparity that they suffer from now, which is unfortunate, because again, that's them putting themselves in that position and now objecting to the fact that the hemp industry isn't in that position.
Well, and what I think has become most interesting is that, I use this example sometimes. The person that made this hemp product also has a CRTA license. They have a social equity license. You have the biggest companies. You mentioned MSOs earlier, Curaleaf and GTI, just to name a few. I think Trulieve is also, really leaning into hemp drinks as well. So it's no longer that this is the people that tend, those three names that I just said, they tend to avoid open markets. But it seems like now they're leaning into hemp, which is essentially an open licensing market. And I guess it's just that thing you started off with. I didn't want to cut you off, but you said that they feel upset. And like you said, you would feel upset too. I would probably feel upset too. But the one thing that I hear from somebody in that position oftentimes is, well, what are we supposed to do? We can't do anything. And it's like, well, get into hemp. Nothing is stopping you from getting into hemp. Like,
I have made that argument countless times. Whenever I've heard someone from the marijuana side of this issue complain about it, my response is, well, nothing is stopping you from selling these products. There's literally nothing stopping you. The problem is they're afraid of competition. Their price points, by and large, are much higher than our price points. Primarily because of the overhead that they have to deal with in their system. So they have a hard time competing with hemp businesses because of that. And again, that just comes back to an issue of a deal that they made and not being able to anticipate what might come down the road sometime, which is, look, nobody has a crystal ball. They couldn't have foreseen at that time that hemp was going to get taken out of the Schedule 1 process in the 2018 Farm Bill. So you can't really blame them for that. But they could easily have gone to the legislature over the last 7 years, and instead of trying to kill the hemp industry or absorb the hemp industry, said, hey, listen, we need a fairer piece of legislation. We need to renegotiate this, because the truth of the matter is that they do provide hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue to the state. And they actually have a fairly decent bargaining position from that perspective to go in there and say, hey, look, if we're to survive, we need to be more competitive. And to be more competitive, we need better rules, better regulations. It's beyond me why they haven't taken that approach as opposed to taking the approach that they are taking, which doesn't really benefit them in the long run.
Right. Right. With licensing fees costing $100,000 just to apply, then another for when it's granted, and each time it's renewed. And then you've got, as people have come on my show and talked about, the surveillance costs. You've got to buy a bank vault. And absent from all of those complaints, have I seen any solutions to basically like remove those requirements? You know what I mean?
Something else that you just mentioned there brings up another point, which is bank vaults. One of the problems that the marijuana industry has is that since they're not federally legal, they have issues with banking, which the hemp industry does not have. We can use credit cards, we can use banks. There are some banks that are a little bit more skeptical, but because we're federally legal, we're not restricted in our financial institutions, something that the marijuana industry has to deal with on a daily basis. So again, that adds to their costs, that adds to their security issues. We're not concerned about having large numbers of cash sitting in hemp stores because everybody uses credit cards for the most part, just like they do in any other store. I mean, we're not really much of a cash society these days in any way, shape, or form. So that's something that is specific to the marijuana dispensaries at this point, which does certainly work at a disadvantage for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get in. I'm getting some questions about your policy proposal, which I think you'll be able to answer. But before I do that, just really briefly, I read an article in Capital News, Illinois, and I might reference this article a few times as we start to close. But I think this is a good segue into getting into your policy. But real quick, a minor speed bump. I read Ford, who spearheads the issue of hemp and cannabis regulation each year, says it's important to balance the promises made to social equity cannabis license holders with any concessions made for hemp. You alluded to that earlier. We'll get into that. The reason I'm pushing that to a side for a moment is because I just read that Representative Ford will be stepping down, or at least not running for reelection on the state level. He will be considering a run at the federal level. Let's just say this doesn't get past the goal line this time and status quo continues. Maybe it's too early for me to ask this question, but how are you feeling about the future of cannabis policy? Because Ford has championed a lot of drug policy in the past, not only cannabis and hemp, but psychedelics as well.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's been in the forefront of it. We just had a roundtable discussion with Representative Ford the week before last that involved other industry actors, and it was broadcast all over the state. It was the first stop in a 4 or 5 stop tour of the state that Representative Ford is undertaking this summer to try to educate different constituencies within the state as to what our policies are. I do understand that he has announced that he's not running for re-election, although he's still got 2 years left on his term, and or a year and a half anyway. And he is going to be looking at a congressional race if Congressman Davis decides to retire. I don't think that that's going to affect his championing of this legislation, at least in the upcoming session. I am hopeful that we can get something passed in the upcoming session. I also think that there are other legislators who will be willing to take up the.
And that was really my question. Yeah, I didn't think.
Yeah, I think that this has become a topic of concern across a broad spectrum right now of the legislature, and I do not expect that there will be any shortage of legislators who will be willing to pick up from Representative Ford if, in fact, he decides that he needs to take more time on campaigning. But again, it's something that I think, for him at least, could be a popular political position while he is campaigning for Congress. So it's something that's a little unpredictable. But my background as a political strategist tells me that there are a lot of moving parts here, and we're going to have to wait to see how it plays itself out.
Yeah, well said. And I was just trying to pull it up. I haven't found it yet, but Penny Hart says Ford has pushed a lot of bills, but never gets anything passed, which is the real measure of success. Yeah, and I think I don't mean to say a lot of people. There have been a lot of cannabis related bills pushed over the years in Illinois, and I think only like 2 have come to fruition in the 5 years. I was trying to find an article that I wrote about it in the past, but I'm not finding it now. But anyways, I think this is a good transition to your policy. I want to be mindful of our time. We're getting questions about taxes. I think you'll cover that, but just wanted to put that on your radar. What's the policy solution here? I think I read in that Capital News Illinois that it's Senate Bill 1.
It is Senate Bill. It's House Bill 1.
House Bill 1. Thank you. Tell us about House Bill 1.
Well, House Bill 1 is, for lack of a better description, somewhat still a work in progress. Representative Ford filed it as the first bill that was filed in the last session, or the current session, I suppose I should say, the current session of the legislature. Since he filed it, there have been multiple revisions to the language that are, again, still a work in progress. And the reason it's a work in progress is because he has been taking comments from various people in the industry and in various stakeholders, and taking that into consideration. Of course, the ILHAA has been working very much with him to try to parse through that language to reach some kind of an amicable agreement with multiple actors in the industry, including the beer distributors and the craft brewers and farming aspects.
Are people in CRTA involved in these conversations?
Well, yeah, they have been to some extent, but the fact of the matter is that there's never going to be, I don't think, I shouldn't say never, you never say never, but I don't think that there's going to be a time where the hemp industry will agree to enter into the CRTA. I don't think it's. I just don't think that it's a realistic outcome to this, because the CRTA, unless it's significantly changed in what its requirements are, is going to defeat the equity aspects of the hemp industry. So I think that that's an issue that's probably beating a dead horse. But again, I never say never to anything. I've been surprised at sometimes who is willing to talk about these issues and who's willing to come to the table. So that remains to be seen.
Gotcha. I was just taking a note. I want to let you continue. I didn't want to jump in, but since you paused, I will. I thought it was notable that you said adopting the CRTA would essentially remove the equitable components from hemp, and I just think that's notable because CRTA is pitched as the most equity centric legislation in the nation.
Yeah, well, that's a very low bar. The social equity aspects of CRTA, while well-intentioned, have been pretty much a miserable failure. I think that's shown by the fact that there are so many licenses out there, social equity licenses out there, that have not actually come to fruition in terms of actual dispensaries being opened. You have seen press conferences being held by social equity license holders, in fact, including Representative Ford, where they have voiced their displeasure with the hoops that they've had to jump through to get to where they need to get to. And I think that, again, while well-intentioned, it still does not measure up to what it should be. And I think that any argument to the contrary is an attempt to justify sticking with the CRTA over the hemp industry.
Yeah. Okay. So again, your proposal, you were just starting to get into it. I didn't mean to take us
Sure.
on a tangent.
No, I understand. So HB1 and its genesis, so to speak, basically calls for age gating, 21 and over, with a minor exception for military veterans between 18 and 21. Active duty military is not allowed to use these products under any set of circumstances. Labeling, testing, child-proof packaging, the removal of any products that appeal to children, that use animal caricatures or cartoon caricatures, or resemble other products like gummies or Skittles or things like that. That's all bad stuff that we need to get out of the marketplace. So those are the primary aspects of our regulations. Now, there are certainly other things. We take it out of beverages out of the 3-tier system that the alcohol industry uses. We call for regulation, licensing, enforcement to be handled by the current Liquor Control Commission, because they have the wherewithal and the experience from regulating alcohol to be able to handle this without being in the alcohol regulation system. So it's a separate system within that department. And then you brought up taxation, which I think is an important point. It's one of the things that we get considerable blowback on from different directions. And I think that it's naive to think that you will not have a taxation system on something like this. One of the big things that come up when we push legislation like this is, how are we going to pay for it? And if you don't have some form of taxation, then it's going to be hard to justify the economic impact of creating a program. So from that perspective, we think taxation is necessary at some level. Now, we've set our taxation numbers at a fairly low level, and it remains to be seen what the legislature will say about that. But I think it's unrealistic to expect that this kind of legislation would not have a taxation component to it.
Gotcha. Any other major components or features of the legislation? You mentioned earlier something about, and I think I read an excerpt earlier where you said with concessions made for or balancing promises made to the current social equity cannabis.
Well, yeah, we have a social equity aspect to the legislation, which includes encouraging applicants, trying to streamline lending processes, counseling in terms of financial planning, things along those lines, all of which are, attractive. But again, I'd like to point out that even if we didn't have a social equity feature specifically in this legislation, the hemp industry is the only true social equity industry out there because access to the industry is much more financially attractive.
Gotcha. So I just spun it in that direction. Any other key components of the legislation that's worth mentioning?
Well, it's a lengthy piece of legislation, but the major components are the age gating, the testing, the packaging, the labeling. We want all of our packaging to have links so that you can scan and go back to what the ingredients are, purity of ingredients. It's a very important thing. Only the highest quality of ingredients going into the products, and then making sure that there are no artificial additives going in there that are not healthy, getting out any heavy metals, things like that. The things that the company that I work for, CBDratom, as I mentioned before, has been in the forefront of self-regulating since really its inception, and we do all of that kind of thing right now. You can't go into any of our stores unless you're 21. Packaging is all safety packaging. Labeling is all very clear. We do outside third-party testing as well as internal testing on our products. And that's what the vast majority of our industry does already. We far exceed what the FDA would likely require if they were regulating us. So it's one of those things where, we're trying to make sure that the industry is up to acceptable standards for consumer protection and child protection.
Yeah. And I'm getting comments like people are saying regulate it like coffee. Do you think this is like sort of a step in that direction where it's not going to be like as burdensome as the CRTA, but we're getting closer to the idea of admitting cannabis should be descheduled and just treated like coffee and alcohol? And
well, I'm not so sure coffee is necessarily the right analogy to make. I do think it's closer to being cigarettes or alcohol insofar. I mean, you can sell coffee to children. Okay. There's
Sure.
no law that says that you can't sell coffee to a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old can go in and buy coffee. So coffee's not really the analogy that I would want to make. But yes, it needs to be regulated. There's no question about that because, look, no one's ever died from an overdose of marijuana or hemp. It just doesn't work that way. You can get sick from it, and you want to protect people, and you want them to know what they're getting and what they're ingesting, and so they can make intelligent decisions about what they're using. So there's due diligence involved in that, and regulation is definitely needed to provide the public with that safety net to be able to rely on. So I don't think that deregulation is the answer, but certainly from the hemp side, we want regulation, just reasonable regulation.
That's what I meant to say. I meant it's a step towards more reasonable regulation. Like,
No
because just
question
the
about it.
seed to sale thing where you were treating cannabis like it's nuclear material is just crazy. And really quick, I got to bring this attention up because I don't think this, I want to be sure we can correct this comment. This person says, man, maybe it's just the hippie of me, but this guy is just a business dude out to make money and not pay taxes. No, you're proposing you pay taxes. You're just saying that, am I correct? You're saying the
Yes.
state sanctioned CRTA is
It's
too high of
overburdensome.
taxes.
Yeah, it's
And you're not,
over.
and you're not saying self-regulation. You're saying
Oh no.
regulate us. So maybe that gets us back to your proposal. Who would be regulating you again? You said something under alcohol.
Yeah, BAT or alcohol and tobacco has experience in regulating, enforcing regulation on these kinds of matters. So that makes the most sense. I would be thrilled if we could create an independent hemp commission that would be in charge of regulating, licensing hemp products. That would be a perfect world from our perspective. However, to set something like that up would probably take 2 or 3 years, practically speaking. And we don't want to shut down for 2 or 3 years while that's taking place. So our perspective is to have the existing framework of alcohol, tobacco regulating while we try to set up an independent hemp commission that would take over that regulation. It makes more sense. It's a logical scenario as far as we're concerned. Nobody wants to shut down for some lengthy period of time to set up an infrastructure to regulate that would probably defeat the whole purpose of it, because all those small businesses that I've been talking about would probably not be able to survive waiting 3 years to get something set up.
Yeah. Well, folks, drop your questions. We can try to get into your questions. Just on your proposal, like, you said there's been updates. Like, can we read the full text now? Like, not like now, but I mean, like, if I looked up HB1, you said on ILGA, I can look up the latest text and kind of get a better understanding of it.
That's a great question. I'm not sure how updated Representative Ford or the LRB, for that matter, has kept the system going. I know for looking at what I have myself, what the most current language is, but that doesn't mean that it's been updated. My experience with both ILGov and the JCAR, etc., is that the language does not always get updated as timely as one would like.
Yeah, man, I was trying to use the new website, the ILGov website, but it's just it's so great. No, it's not bad. It's just getting used to it, but I couldn't find it currently. But
I find from not only from Illinois, but from many other places, that trying to get current language and legislation can be a little testy sometimes.
yeah, I actually found out where the language should be, but to your point, I don't know that this is, gosh, this cookies thing won't get out of my face. The last action, it looks like, was at the beginning of this year. So I'm guessing if you have,
that's outdated.
oh, okay, that's outdated, you said?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. If people show up to like this tour thing, or like, I'm the type of nerd that would,
Sure.
are we able to look at like language and kind of get a better handle of it? Is that the forum for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd be able to ask questions and things like that.
Cool. Again, folks, drop your questions if you have any. I had a question for you. I feel like there's like 3 other proposals at least. There's 2 by, I think, the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. I feel like there's another one out there floating around. I can't find it right now.
There
What?
is the ILHG,
Yeah.
Illinois Hemp Growers.
Yeah, they've got House Bill 64 and Senate Bill 1775.
Yeah, that's Tanya
Sonia Harper.
Harper. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
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 Again, if you look at that, I don't want to be too critical because I think that they're very well-meaning, but they don't want a whole lot of licensing, and they certainly don't want any taxes. And I don't think it's realistic. It's a much more basic proposal, and I don't think that you can get legislators to buy in to that proposal. I think it's I'm going to use the word Pollyanna-ish, but because most people don't know what that
Yeah, I was
means
gonna say, I
when you
don't know
say
what that
it.
means.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking.
Okay.
It's something that that you're just not gonna you're not gonna get enough people to buy in on it. I think that it's not strong enough.
Do you
Uh,
think it's the lack of taxes or
I think, well,
anything
I
specific?
certainly think that's a big part of it, but I think
Yeah.
the the lack of licensure quality, so to speak, is another issue. I think they just want as little as possible, and I just don't think that that's realistic. I think the other thing that you're probably thinking of is Senator Cunningham's bill, which
Yeah.
provides a carve out for beverages, which again, I think is, I think it's been made clear that that's not going to go anywhere. The idea that you're going to pick winners and losers by carving out just the beverage portion, and by the way, my company has a heavy interest in beverages. So I say this, and I don't mean it to sound like it's self-serving at all. But you know, a beverage carve out would certainly help some aspect of our business, as opposed to a ban or putting everything into the CRTA. But I don't think a beverage carve out is healthy for the industry. I think that if there's one thing that we learned, and when I say we, I mean the hemp industry as a whole, learned from what's gone on in Texas this year, is that when one part of the industry tries to get a carve out for itself at the expense of the rest of the industry, it has a tendency to blow up in everybody's face, and nobody's successful. So I think that that aspect, or that idea of having a carve out is really a non-starter. But I think that's the other legislation you're probably thinking of.
Gotcha. Yeah, one of the things I'm curious, I know this is sort of a granular question, but the House Bill 64, which is the one from Sonia Harper,
Hmm.
is a small read. And one of the things I thought was interesting about it is that it would take one of the things David Lakeman, in my conversation that I mentioned with him earlier,
Hmm.
did tell me was, well, Cole, your application would be denied because you live, if you got it for your own property, because you're on residential property.
Hmm.
That's actually one thing that I really love about the Illinois hemp growers bill that I recall seeing. I'm quite positive it's their bill.
Hmm.
Does your bill have a similar component where you're not required to be zoned as?
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing there. There's no zoning requirement in our bill. It's we actually had several meetings with David Lakeman and Jay Carr earlier in the year because of the regulations that they were going to promulgate, which ended up not happening at all at this point. But yeah, I understand that for the home growers, and a lot of places have restrictions on that. We do not call for restrictions on that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Well, that's what I like to hear. But okay, well, we're not getting really any questions in here. I did want to ask you because it's something that always comes up, and I left it on the tail end of the show because personally, like, I'm the kind of guy that thinks that Sears magazines need to have, and hear me out on this. I'm the kind of guy where it's like, all right, Sears magazines can have morphine in them. I know, radical position. But there are some people that I know you take that as a radical position, and that's I acknowledge it is a radical position. But my point in bringing that up is I've had people from smoke shops in the past, and they come on and they talk about selling kratom, which is something you mentioned that you sell. And personally, when I hear about it, I'm like, yeah, that should be something that's available for people. But some of the perspectives I've heard is like that people can get super addicted to it and stuff. Like, what's your, I mean, you're in it. So like, is that, am I just getting bad anecdotes?
No, well, here's the
Or,
thing, okay? There's a couple of different components to that. First of all, you have to separate kratom from 7-OH. 7-OH is synthetic,
okay.
and it is not naturally derived from kratom. And it is a much more powerful product and has much more of a psychoactive effect. I think if you checked like your local CDC or poison control people, you'd find that most of the reports of bad kratom interactions never go past the point of identifying the fact that it's kratom or that kratom is in the system, and don't really address the fact that it's generally with the use of something else, a different substance in addition to kratom, whether that's alcohol or another prescription drug, or whether it's 7-OH. They don't differentiate. So the problem is that when you hear about the bad interactions, you're not really getting a lot of interaction or interface on what exactly is involved in that interaction. So to say that it's a kratom interaction is a little too overbroad. And then again, kratom, like any other substance that you're going to use, has to be used according to the directions that you get and the recommendations that are used. You can obviously overdose on alcohol. There's alcohol poisoning exists, and you don't see people saying that we should be banning alcohol. Well, you do see people saying we should ban alcohol, but not too many of them.
Right.
The temperance movement has pretty much disappeared.
I was going to say they're not taken seriously.
No, not really. But so kratom has been used for thousands of years in other cultures without issues. In Southeast Asia, they use it like you drink coffee in the morning.
And that's what was so interesting about the anecdote that I did hear, is that they were like talking about some of the bad things they've seen, but then they said when they did research on it and everything else, that where it's normally used, like they don't have these problems of abuse.
No, they don't. Well, again, I hate to say any kind of a generalization, but of course, the United States has an abuse issue across the board on any substance you could possibly imagine, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's alcohol, whether it's opioids,
food.
Whatever. Pardon me?
Food.
Yeah. Again. Yeah. So
yeah.
That's to some extent a societal issue.
Yeah.
So you can abuse anything. The question is, what processes are in place that would try to give you some guidance on that. And again, there's something called the KPCA, the Kratom, KCPA, Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which has been passed in some states. Utah, I think, was the first. Something that we are fully supportive as a company, and as my other hat in the kratom industry, we are very much supportive of. We've tried to get it passed in Illinois. We've tried to get it passed in Missouri. It made its way all the way to the governor's desk in Missouri before he didn't sign it. And again, that's a call for regulation. Once again, an industry coming to government and saying, hey, regulate us.
Gotcha. And so the 7-OH you're saying is Is it the problem, or does it just need to be regulated better?
7OH is an interesting topic. Uh, we don't actually carry 7OH products, but they're very popular. They've become very popular, and yeah, I think it's a regulation issue, and you're going to get disagreement within the kratom industry about that. A lot of disagreement. I mean, you can talk to the American Kratom Association, which will tell you they're against 7OH. We happen to be a member of the AKA. Or you can talk to people at HEART, which is an organization that supports 7OH with regulation. I mean, they're all over the board on that one. But to try to give you the short version, as my wife always says, please give me the short version. 7OH is a more potent product. It is synthetic, and it needs to be regulated if it's going to be allowed in such a way as to make sure that people know what it is that they're using, what the possible effects are, and also to keep it out of the hands of minors.
Yeah. Well, okay, we'll start to wrap here. I wanted to just display, I did see this comment. It was made earlier, though. It wasn't relevant, but just since we're on the 7OH thing, they say, do we know 7OH is a safe alternative? Do we have data to back it up? It sounds like you're saying we just, I don't know. Do you have any response to that question?
The answer to that question is that it's being studied in multiple venues. And I think it's still too early as far as what, we in the United States consider to be adequate testing. Again, anecdotally, you can say, hey, it's been around for thousands of years and it's been used for thousands of years without having any of these issues that we're talking about in terms of overuse or addictive behavior. But the way we regulate in the United States is we have to test things and we have to run different trials and things of that nature. It's being done in like I said, in various venues, both public and private. And I think at this point, we may not know the answer to that question yet. And that's one of the reasons why I think regulation is important, certainly while we're looking at those issues.
Gotcha. Wanted to briefly acknowledge this comment. Our friend Miggy from Cannabis Legalization News says, what is regulation? And I'm going to answer it very briefly. 3 pillars: ID people to make sure that you're selling to adults, make sure the products you're selling are tested and labeled accurately. It's the model they employ in dispensaries. I think it's the model we should employ if we sell cannabis at large anywhere. I think that's a quick answer. And I will go ahead.
It's a good answer.
Thank you. And I will say, and I've admittedly said in the past that maybe this is idealistic of me, but Craig, when I read the Illinois Hemp Growers Association's proposal, I like it because it includes those 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also concede to you. I mean, I just had an economist on within the last week, Bo Whitney, and he said that he had a conversation with the Illinois governor's office. And he said, look, if you just lower your adult use taxes a little bit, you'll actually get people to buy more cannabis and you'll get more revenue. And all they heard was we're not lower taxes. They didn't hear the end part, which is you're going to get in more revenue. So that's where I sort of concede to you, where I'm like, and even LaShawn Ford, when I had him on my show in the past, I said, this is the 3-pillar approach. And he said, wait. Don't forget, I'm a Democrat. I got to get taxes out of this. So I think you're right that it seems like in Illinois, it's part of the conversation. But to be completely honest, I wish it was just left up to localities. But that's just Cole.
Well, Bo, by the way, is the last word on data. I mean, he is the guy that we all in the industry go to say, hey, what's the gross revenue that's coming out of this product in this state, or how is this affecting the economy? He is the man on that. And so when he says that he believes that would be the answer to actually increasing revenue, I think he's 100% spot on as far as that's concerned. And so there's no question that there has to be a revenue aspect. And the only other thing anecdotally that I can tell you is that when we presented legislation in Missouri along these same lines that did not have a taxation aspect to them, there was a fiscal note that came out of the Department of Health and Senior Services there that tagged the cost of the program at about $95 million. And I can tell you that the first thing that happened in committee when the legislators saw that fiscal note was after they rolled their eyes, they said, we can't go with a program like this that costs that much money. How are we going to pay for it? And so to avoid those kind of issues, because they prepare fiscal notes on every piece of legislation that goes. They want to know how much it's going to cost because they have a duty to taxpayers to try to keep the budget in line and to try to balance the budget and not to run into deficit. And so in respect to that and respecting that, we feel that it's necessary to have something there that we can adequately say will support the cost of the program.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just asking you, like, as somebody who's advocating for these policies, like, personally for me, like, my goal is just to repair the harm done by the war on drugs. And I know, like you said, like Illinois, for example, they literally said that they were passing adult use cannabis as a revenue issue. They also sort of mentioned that it's a criminal justice issue, but they primarily mentioned, hey, this is a revenue issue. So I know you have to speak their language, but I guess what I'm asking you sort of candidly is, are there times, like, as an advocate where you're like, okay, I guess I got to do these things. Like, I guess we got to add a tax component, or I guess we got to.
And the thing is, when I look at these things from a drafting standpoint, I look at it and say, well, we have to try to keep this low, because if Illinois passes something and it has a tax on it, then the city of Chicago is also looking for revenue. And they're going to see it as an opportunity for them to raise money. I mean, they've got a huge hole in their budget right now. I think everybody does because of the cuts that have been made in Washington. And then it's a copycat world as far as legislatures are concerned. You can be sure that Cook County would try to do the same thing. So then you're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, you're going to pay an excise tax to the state, to the city, and the county. And when you add that up, what's it going to be? Because if it's going to be too much, people aren't going to buy the product at all. You're going to chase them out of the store and then kill the business entirely. So I do understand that, and that's why we look at what we think is going to be something reasonable, not something that's going to drive people out of business and drive customers away.
Gotcha. Well, Craig, let's keep in touch. Maybe we do this again as we enter the legislative session. I like to try to get perspectives from the ground, and I get the sense that you'll be at the Capitol, or maybe people you know. And so, when things start to warm up at the Capitol, or I guess cool off, it's going to be becoming the fall season.
Yes.
But I know things are probably going to get heated in a way, and would love to have you back on and maybe talk of the latest developments.
Well, Cole, I appreciate your having me on and giving me an opportunity to talk about these issues, because they are very important. So again, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, I hope you found value in this conversation. Stay tuned. We'll have some news broadcasts coming soon. Smash that like button. And folks, we'll see you in the next episode of the Cole Memo. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.